Thank you for being here at the lockup for Budget 2026. I want to begin by acknowledging with respect that we are on the traditional and unceded territories of the Lekwungen-speaking people, the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. Before we start, I want to say a few words about the precious lives that were lost just a week ago in Tumbler Ridge. And thinking about the tremendous grief that the people in that community, in the Peace region, in British Columbia, all across Canada, are experiencing. Such a tragedy changes our perspectives. Things that seemed important on Monday of last week, much less so on Tuesday. It makes us think about what matters most: our families, our friendships, our communities, our connections with each other. And I know I speak for everyone in the room when I say that our hearts are with the people in Tumbler Ridge and our thoughts are with them. This truly is an unimaginable time for their community, and I know we're all thinking of them. As out of sync as it feels to talk about or work on anything else, we must. And I'm here to present Budget 2026 and to give you an opportunity to learn about our government's plans over the next 3 years. We will continue our work, but we will do so with the people of Tumbler Ridge in our hearts. Budget 2026 was created at a time of fundamental change. We presented last year's budget, as you might remember, on the very day that US tariffs were meant to come in. And since then, we've seen a flurry of both words and actions from President Trump that once seemed truly unimaginable from our closest ally. The trade war has disrupted supply chains and changed the world order irrevocably. It has put us in an entirely different situation. This budget reflects that. It's a budget not about nostalgia, but about making careful choices to protect our services and build a strong future. It faces a tough reality with clarity. It forces us to pause on some of the things that we want to do and focus on the things that we have to do. This means protecting the services that British Columbians rely on: healthcare, mental health, education. This includes recruiting and training more healthcare professionals such as doctors and nurses and long-term care support workers in communities across BC, and hiring additional teachers, including special education teachers, teacher psychologists, school counselors, to help young people in our schools. It also means keeping costs down. Budget 2026 includes new funding to protect and expand childcare services for family, maintain lower fees, and the spaces and support for operators and educators that we've achieved over the last 8 years. Budget 2026 makes investments to secure BC's future. It includes funding to help train for good-paying jobs in the skilled trades, which will help us advance major projects and secure federal and private sector investments. And finally, Budget 2026 is about implementing disciplined measures to strengthen BC's finances. This includes measures to reduce administration and make the public sector leaner, more efficient, so more dollars reach the front lines. It means pacing infrastructure projects sequentially, delivering them efficiently without driving up costs. But before we get into the details of the upcoming budget and fiscal plan, I'll briefly discuss the updated forecast for our current year. This first table shows the progression of key fiscal metrics by quarter for the current year, 2025-2026. You can see that operating results, while fluctuating, have improved, and the deficit is now better than forecast in Budget 2025. Our capital plan forecasts over $17 billion in total investments this year. Debt forecast is showing some improvement as well, due to improved operating results and lower capital spending. I'm pleased to see the debt metrics improved as well. Debt to GDP now estimated at 26.1, and the interest rate is flat over the year. This chart provides a visual of the changes from second quarterly report to the current fiscal year. The third quarter forecast projects a deficit of $9.6 billion for 25-26. That's $1.6 billion improved from the second quarter. Total revenues are $1.3 billion higher, due mainly to strong gains in personal and corporate income tax revenues as generated by the federal government. On the spending side, overall expenses are down $267 million due to the lower refundable tax credits and net service delivery agency spending. I'm also pleased to report that we're forecasting $100 million over our initial $300 million expenditure management target. There's more on that we highlight throughout the budget document itself, and I'll speak more on that later in the presentation. These lower spending amounts are partially offset by higher statutory spending related to disaster recovery. You can find more information on the Q3 forecast update in Part 4 of the budget document. A full year report on 25-26 results will come out in the summer as part of public accounts. Now let's talk about BC's economic indicators. We saw mixed economic activity among the sectors last year amid US tariffs and declining population growth. The numbers of jobs in BC was up 32,200 in 2025 compared to 2024, led by the private sector, with small gains in the public sector and self-employed workers. This highlights the innovative and resilient entrepreneurs in BC, the businesses and skilled workers in our province. Despite job gains, the unemployment rate has gone up. Most recently, BC's unemployment rate was 6.1 in January 2026, which remains below the national average of 6.5. After several years of exceptional gains, population growth has slowed as a result of federal immigration targets. And on October 1st, 2025, BC's population was 5.68 million, down 0.2% from the same date in 2024. BC retail sales have been resilient despite slower population growth and were up 6.2 year-to-date to November 2025, reflecting strong gains in the first half of the year. In 2025, BC's headline inflation fell to 2.1%, the lowest annual inflation rate since 2020. We saw shelter inflation in the province slow substantially in 2025, and in December 2025, BC's headline inflation rate was 1.7 year over year, well below the national average of 2.4. As inflation moderated, the Bank of Canada gradually lowered interest rates to more supportive levels in 2025 and were unchanged in their first two meetings. On the housing front, heightened economic uncertainty and lower migration weighed on the housing market activity this year. Despite lower interest rates, BC home sales were down 5.7% in 2025 compared to 2024. BC housing starts decreased by 3.7% compared to 2024, but remained above the 10-year historic average. Regarding trade, BC's diversified goods exports have shown resilience amid US tariffs, heightened uncertainty around future trade policy, and volatile commodity pricing. Year-to-date to November 2025, the value of total BC goods exports was unchanged, 0%, compared to the same period, 2024. During this period, we saw higher exports to non-US destinations, up 3%, which offset a decline in exports to the US, minus 2.7%. From a commodity perspective, much of the fluctuation that we're seeing is due to price changes. For example, the value of coal exports are down, mainly due to lower prices, Meanwhile, price increases were largely responsible for the gains in natural gas and copper exports. The forestry sector is the exception, where volumes of softwood lumber and other forest products are down. Turning to the outlook, this chart shows the Ministry of Finance's forecasts for BC's real GDP compared to the private sector forecasters from the Economic Forecast Council. BC's economy has broadly evolved in line with ministry expectations since the second quarterly report. The ministry projects real GDP growth of 1.3% in 2026, 1.8% in 27, similar to the previous projections of 1.3 and 1.9 respectively. The ministry's forecast for BC real GDP growth is prudent compared to the average of the Economic Forecast Council forecasts in the near term, and over the medium term, the ministry's forecast is within the range of the council predictions. There is uncertainty in views on the ultimate impact of various factors such as immigration and trade policy on the economy, and that's why there is a wide range of expectations by private sector forecasters, a low of 1.2% growth to a high of 1.8% growth for this year, and a low of 1.3% and a high of 2.4% for next year. The economic outlook for BC is favorable compared to other jurisdictions. Among provinces, BC's economic growth is expected to be tied for fourth in 2026 and tied for second in 2027, according to private sector forecasters. As you'll hear more about later, growing our economy, training new skilled workers, and creating jobs remains a key priority for us. In the past year, we've helped businesses showcase their products on the global stage through our Integrated Marketplace initiative. We've invested into the development of life-saving drug development and launched a new economic strategy to grow our economy. While some of these initiatives are longer term and their impact won't be captured in these charts on our fiscal plan, we are always planning for BC's future. I know that there have been a lot of comments made about an austerity budget. I want to be clear, this is not an austerity budget. Budget 2026 makes significant investments to meet the growing needs and create a stronger, more prosperous province with the services that British Columbians need. Government revenues are forecast to grow by $7.2 billion, from $85.1 billion this year to $91.8 in 28-29. We're seeing growth in natural resource revenues, mainly due to increased production volumes for natural gas, as well as revenue growth in taxation over the fiscal plan, reflected improvements in income tax, sales tax, and property transfer tax. Revenue growth also captures the impact of government's new revenue measures, which we will be discussing shortly. The three-year fiscal plan provides an additional $3.9 billion for ministry-based budgets, largely to maintain critical services in health, in education, in social services, justice, and public safety. Total expenses also include an allocation of $5 billion annually in contingencies to help manage unexpected expenses like higher demand for services, costs for the new collective bargaining mandate, and emerging priorities. While deficits are higher compared to those in Budget 2025, they are projected to decline over the fiscal plan as we make careful, disciplined spending choices. These difficult choices have allowed us to protect critical services during this period of uncertainty. Our expenditure management efforts are continuing. The impacts of the initial saving efforts have been met and exceeded our initial targets laid out in Budget 2025 and have been incorporated into ministry-based budgets and contingencies. We have a topic box on the subject and in the budget and fiscal plan that provides more detail. Our deficit is projected at $13.3 billion in 26-27 and forecast to decrease to $11.4 billion in 28-29 as our government makes disciplined choices to reduce spending and increase revenue. We've taken steps to repace our capital plan. Repacing the plan will provide more fiscal sustainability and predictability over the longer term so we can continue to build the services that people need. We are continuing to invest in schools, hospitals, transit and transportation projects. Over the next 3 years, BC will invest nearly $38 billion in important infrastructure projects. That's $8.2 billion lower than predicted in Budget 2025, but capital spending in Budget 2026 still remains among the highest per capita compared to our provincial peers. The province's taxpayer-supported debt is estimated at $154 billion this year and projected to reach $235 billion by 28-29. Other key metrics. The taxpayer-supported debt to GDP ratio is 26.1 this year, which is expected to grow, as you can see in this table, and expected to remain lower than many other provinces, as I will show next. We're also highlighting our deficit to GDP ratio in the summary table. This metric is improving over the 3-year plan as we take steps to manage spending. This debt will finance the operating and capital investment we need to grow, and our debt burden remains manageable. In this chart, we compared BC to our main peer provinces to show our position in terms of net liabilities to GDP. Our budget comes out earlier than most jurisdictions in Canada, so this is based on the current public information. We continue to be relatively well-positioned over the near term, but debt management and expenditure management must continue over the long term. Budget 2026 protects the critical services that people rely on every day. The goal of our expenditure management efforts is to protect our services by reducing spending in other areas. Budget 2026 invests $2.8 billion over 3 years for healthcare, mental health services, and addiction supports. Provincial investments have contributed to shorter wait times for diagnostic screenings and specialists, to opening up hospitals and urgent primary care centres, and to increasing the number of doctors in BC by more than 1,000. At the same time, we know that there is work ahead. Not everyone in BC has a family doctor yet. Through Budget 2026, we will hire more doctors, nurses, and other healthcare workers so that people can access the care that they need when and where they need it. This budget also includes continued funding for intensive mental health and addictions treatment, including increasing spaces for those who need involuntary care. For our K-12 education system, Budget 2026 invests $634 million. This includes more funding to hire teachers, more special education teachers, more teacher psychologists, and counselors to support young people in the classroom. As announced last week, we're investing $475 million to redesign how we provide supports for children and youth living with disabilities. Budget 2026 also includes $479 million for children and youth in care and alternative care, $373 million to support increased demand for income and disability assistance, and for supports for adults with developmental disabilities and community living BC. $52 million for improved disability assistance for couples. These investments fund the work of doctors, of nurses, of teachers, of long-term care workers, social workers, counselors, and paramedics in our communities. Without investments in these areas, we would not have the foundation upon which that we can build a strong, sustainable economy. At the same time, as we invest in our critical services, our government is focused on growing our economy to secure BC's future. Training people for good jobs is essential to building a strong economy that supports people in business. Look West is our targeted strategy to stoke economic growth and job creation. While tariffs and global economic instability have produced challenges, it also provides us with opportunity. Budget 2026 includes $240 million to double skilled trades over the next 3 years, giving tens of thousands of people the opportunity to enter good-paying careers. This funding will address wait lists for the most in-demand trades, increase per-seat funding, and continue the expansion of skilled trades certification, starting with crane operators. $30 million will go towards training highly qualified professionals needed for the emergency sectors of the economy we are targeting, such as engineers, geologists, computer scientists, biotechnicians, and aerospace roles. An additional $12 million will enhance the BC Employer Training Grant to help with our goal of doubling apprenticeships by 2028. We are also launching a strategic investment special account. Budget 2026 allocates $400 million in funding for the new British Columbia Strategic Investment Special Account. Funding will enable BC to work collectively with the Government of Canada as it invests billions of dollars to secure Canada's sovereignty, along with the jobs and economic opportunities that these projects will bring. The account will be used to attract investment that builds on BC's strength in clean energy, value-added forestry, manufacturing, responsible mining, life sciences, AI, quantum, our marine sector, and aerospace, and clean technology. Budget 2026 continues our work to date on improving permitting. We know that our work thus far has shown real results in our vital mining sector. Last year, nearly 35% more exploration permits were issued than in 2024. We've also reduced timelines for major mine applications by 35% since 2019. In a real-world example, let's look at the Mount Mulligan copper gold mine expansion near Fort St. James that was approved just last month. This mine was approved quickly because of our streamlining permitting process. This process removes duplication while staying true to our stringent environmental requirements and obligations to Indigenous right holders. Centerra Gold's CEO told us this was a strong example of what can be accomplished when government, First Nation, and industry worked together in support of responsible resource development. To continue building on our successes, Budget 2026 invests $40 million over the 3-year fiscal period to continue to streamline permit approvals, providing sufficient resourcing to support major project authorizations and respond to resourcing demands. This funding also supports the implementation of the Mineral Claims Consultation Framework. Budget 2026 also includes $35 million to fund the 2026 intake of the Clean Industry Fund, which provides funding to industrial operators to help them implement more innovative solutions that reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. Following up on our commitment in last year's budget, we are introducing the First Nations Equity Financing Program. Government has completed development of guiding policies and criteria and will formally launch the program this spring. The program will support equity financing opportunities for First Nations to have meaningful participation in projects within British Columbia, when there is shared interest and readiness with the province. Government intends to establish a total cumulative loan guarantee of $1 billion for the special account, which will be reviewed annually. Our government has been taking action on all fronts to make our communities safer. Budget 2026 invests $139 million over 3 years in public safety measures and to improve access to justice. Of this funding, $73 million will continue to improve access to the justice system and support court operations, including sheriff recruitment and retention, Crown Counsel, the judiciary, legal aid, and the BC Prosecution Service. We are investing $26 million in the Repeat Violent Offender Intervention Initiative, REPOI, and creating a new program, Chronic Property Offending Intervention Initiative, CPOI, for repeat nonviolent property crime offenders. These special investigation and targeted enforcement and community safety programs are providing valuable resources to police and outreach workers across the province. Delivered targeted enforcement and connecting victims to available services. We're taking decisive action to confront the rise in extortion south of the Fraser by strengthening coordination between the RCMP, BC's Extortion Task Force, and Surrey's local police force through the establishment of a dedicated community advisory group. To aid in all our efforts to keep people safe, we have secured federal funding for more police officers, helicopter support, and national coordination to combat extortion. At Budget 2025 last year, we committed to initial savings. Government has exceeded these targets. This year, forecasts are estimated to exceed the $400 million, and Budget 2026 has implemented savings measures of more than $900 million in 2026-27, $1.2 billion in 27-28, and $1.3 billion in 28-29. More than half of these savings have been reinvested or used to offset funding for core services, such as healthcare, education, and social services. This reflected a tremendous amount of work across the public service, and there is still much to do. Over the past 10 years, public sector growth has increased by over 40%, including more than 80 FTEs since 2020. This has significantly outpaced economic and general population growth. Much of this growth can be attributed to improvements in services and delivering on government commitments in sectors such as healthcare and education, hiring more teachers, doctors, nurses, healthcare science professionals. In tandem with ongoing efforts to restructure operations and consolidate internal services, government is pursuing measures to return the size of the public sector to a more sustainable level and to protect critical services. Government is committed to reducing approximately 15,000 public sector FTEs by the end of 28-29, which represents 3.4% of the public sector workforce. The public sector includes organizations outside of core government ministries such as Crown corporations, school districts, post-secondary institutions, and health authorities. Of these FTE reductions, 2,500 will be in the core public service. These are positions in core government ministries. To the extent possible, these reductions will be achieved through attrition and voluntary departures. However, additional measures such as early retirement and voluntary severance may be necessary to help support the transition to a more sustainable public sector. Government will provide an update on its progress towards these goals through the financially quarterly reports. To protect critical services for the people of BC, we are taking steps to increase provincial revenue by updating our tax system. Budget 2026 increases the tax rate for first income tax bracket that is paid by all taxpayers from 5.06% to 5.60%, a change of just over half of a percentage point. The average taxpayer will pay an additional $76 as a result of this change. To protect lower-income British Columbians, we are increasing the BC tax reduction credit by $115, leading to over 40% of taxpayers seeing a savings on their income taxes. We are also pausing indexation of tax brackets from 2027 to 2030. At the same time, we continue to protect affordability and ensure British Columbians benefit from some of the lowest overall tax burdens in Canada. An estimated 1% of tax filers will pay the maximum impact of this tax increase, which is $201 per year. The individuals who are estimated to pay this amount have an income greater than $140,000 and do not have additional credits to offset the increased taxes. These individuals are more likely to have investment income or income from property other than employment, which do not have corresponding tax credits. This year, individuals earning less than $149,000 will continue to have the lowest income tax in Canada. Finally, it is important to remember that the federal government recently reduced income taxes. The net effect is that the vast majority of people will still be paying less income tax this year than they were last year. Budget 2026 broadens the PST tax base to include professional services and removing outdated exemptions like basic cable and 1-800 numbers. These changes are generally aligned with how these products and services are taxed in other provinces. Budget 2026 also makes changes in our property tax programs, including adjusting property tax deferment loan terms to more closely match commercial lending terms, so taxpayers are not subsidizing investment arbitrage opportunities while still offering support to seniors who want to stay in their homes. The old program offered extremely low interest rates and only simple interest, effectively allowing some people to defer their taxes and put the loaned money into investments. This is not what the program was designed for, and we're correcting it. The deferment loans still do not require a payment until the home is sold and have no prepayment penalty, so it does remain a support to seniors who need the program. As part of our commitment to making sure homes are for living in, not investments, we're increasing the speculation and vacancy tax for foreign owners. Following the removal of the carbon tax last year, we are also removing enhancement from the homeowner grant program that were intended to offset the carbon tax. This means that homeowners receiving the $200 Northern and Rural Homeowner Grant top-up will stop receiving it in 2027. This program was put in place to offset carbon tax faced by homeowners living in rural areas that might have had a overweighted impact from the carbon tax. Budget 2026 also increases the additional school tax rate on high-valued homes valued at over $3 million, affecting approximately 55,000 properties. These careful tax changes made in this budget ensure that government has the revenues required to continue to protect the critical services British Columbians all use while keeping income tax rates competitive. BC's manufacturing sector is an important part of the future we're building, and it's one of our largest sectors. To help these businesses become more productive, BC will be introducing a new temporary manufacturing and processing investment tax credit to help them invest in new equipment and machinery. The province is also aligning the BC Scientific Research Development Tax Credit with recent federal changes and expand access and encourage businesses to conduct research and development right here in BC. Budget 2026 includes plans to work with the life sciences industry to examine setting up a patent box system for 2028. Patent boxes reward successful innovations that generate income right here in BC. These changes will help grow the manufacturing and processing sector and support research and development in the province, growing our productivity, driving the economy, and creating good-paying jobs for British Columbians. Since 2017, government has made record investments into provincial infrastructure, including nearly $114 billion for new hospitals, over $13 billion for transportation projects, and over $15 billion in schools, universities, and colleges. Budget 2026 continues this work, while at the same time adjusting the pace of our capital plan in recognition of our need to temper construction cost escalation and support a competitive debt-to-GDP ratio. This includes repacing several long-term care facilities, student housing at the University of Victoria, and Phase 2 of the Burnaby Hospital. These are not cancellations. This is a recognition that the province needs to strategically sequence projects to address fiscal pressures. We know that BC's population is aging. Government is taking action to deliver beds more effectively through a full review of the long-term care infrastructure program to achieve cost efficiencies while maintaining safe, high-quality care for seniors. And we are refreshing plans to ensure that the Phase 2 of Burnaby Hospital and Cancer Care Centre meet the needs of the community. Despite this repacing, our capital plan remains ambitious and funding levels remain higher than pre-2018 investments. We're continuing to invest in the schools, the hospitals, the transportation infrastructure that people need, with nearly $38 billion in capital funding over the next 3 years. This includes $4.4 billion for post-secondary education projects, including 3,900 new student beds, $3.9 billion for K-12 projects that will support 23,600 new spaces, $11.1 billion for hospitals, long-term care homes, and cancer care centers, including the redevelopment of Dawson Creek and District Hospital, the new St. Paul's Hospital, and cancer care centres in Surrey, Nanaimo, and Kamloops. $13.8 billion towards crucial highway and transit expansion projects, including the Surrey-Langley SkyTrain, the Fraser River Tunnel Project, and Highway 1 widening through the Fraser Valley. $2.7 billion to invest in homes for people, $1.4 billion toward maintaining government-owned infrastructure projects. This budget is being released during a time of ongoing and heightened economic uncertainty, including the US tariffs and renewal of CUSMA. There is also uncertainty around the effect of federal immigration levels and related impacts to the workforce, services, and the economy. This makes economic and fiscal forecasting complex and challenging. These risks are mitigated somewhat by prudence built into the fiscal plan, including economic prudence in external assumptions, conservative natural gas pricing, and $5 billion in contingency vote in each year of the fiscal plan. The ministry will continue to monitor and will build in new information about spending, review the economy, and provide updated forecasts through the quarterly reporting process as things change and evolve. At a time of global instability, our government is working hard to protect what matters most. This means protecting key services like healthcare and education, social services, and keeping costs down by protecting childcare services for families and keeping taxes low for working families. At the same time, our government is prioritizing economic growth to secure BC's future. This means investing in a skilled workforce, accelerating major projects that attract federal and private sector funding, and to grow and protect our economy and ensure a prosperous tomorrow. This also means exercising fiscal discipline, including measures to reduce administrative and unnecessary public spending, making the public sector leaner and more efficient, and pace infrastructure projects carefully to deliver them efficiently without driving up costs. Our world remains uncertain. We don't know what will come next. Through Budget 2026, we're making careful choices to protect what matters most and to build a strong future. We are investing in the economic growth of our province through new tools to support growth, deliver job-creating major projects, and generate revenue needed to sustain public services and invest in what comes next. This is serious work for serious times. It's our time to take a pause on some of the things we want to do, to deliver on the things that we need to do. We must make our way through these difficult times by relying on each other, by investing in our people, our businesses, and the services and infrastructure that they need. This budget does that with discipline and with clarity. It shapes a stronger and brighter future for all British Columbians. Thank you.